guys, Farming Simulator has a DLC problem. It actually might not be a problem yet. It might not be a problem in Farm Sim 25 at all, but it has a problem that's coming pretty quickly at it, and I think some changes need to happen relatively quickly. We're going to get into that. We're also going to be looking at the new DLC that's just about to release for Farming Simulator 25, the Mercedes-Benz Truck Pack. Now, before we get into this whole problem, let me be clear. I'm a huge fan of Farming Simulator, of course. It's the only content we do on this channel for the most part, and I want nothing but the best, but I think things need to change, and I'm not 100% sure what the best course of action is here. So before we get into all of that, let's take a quick look at this Mercedes-Benz Truck Pack since we've got early access to it. We'll quickly talk about it really quickly. We're going to get into what the problem is with Farming Simulator 25 DLC. And of course, for all your Farming Simulator content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and if you're on mobile, go down to the bottom and hit the hype button. I don't know what it does, but I could use some hype right about now. All right, let's get into this. So this here is the Mercedes-Benz Truck Pack. It retails for $12.99, comes out on September 9th. At time of recording, it's still for $11.69 US. It includes 17 pieces of equipment, most of which are, well, Mercedes-Benz or Mercedes-Benz related. Now, just because it's called the Truck Pack doesn't mean they're all trucks. We're going to look at all of this stuff. Of course, just a reminder, if you're looking to pick this up, you can click the link down in the description below, or also part of the Year 1 Seasons Pass for Farming Simulator 25. Now, like I said, it's mostly trucks, or a lot of trucks, but they're all a little bit different. Now, I'm not all that familiar with the Mercedes-Benz truck line, but we do have a couple of different highway trucks, a couple different variations. I think it's the Arctros. Yeah, there we go. So there's a couple variations. They come in different wheelbases. You can change this so it has the dual wheels in the back as well. A couple different cabin configurations as well. This one over here is the hook lift variant of it. And there are two different hook lift trucks that come with this pack. There's the highway truck variant right here. And then down over on the far side, it's the 4-axled, I guess. 2 front and steer axle, which is kind of nice, but this is also a hook lift. And there are several other bins of types that you can utilize that hook lift for that come with this package. Now, all these trucks, like I said, high detail, look great inside. If we jump right inside this one in particular here, we go inside cab view, yeah, it looks great. It's exactly what you would expect. It's close to par, I guess, with like a Euro Truck sim almost, to some degree, a little, not quite as much, but definitely, yeah, there's some similarities. It looks really quite nice inside. We have highway trucks. We have some more utilities type trucks, or city trucks, I guess. That is the smallest version of that Mercedes-Benz right there. If we keep on going down, there is this one here, the Heinzo truck. I've never seen this one, of course, in real life. I think it's European, of course. And then there's some Unimogs down there. Now, the interesting thing with these particular trucks, well, this one here has a PTO hitch on the rear end of it. So, yeah, you can power some equipment like a baler or something along those lines, potentially with this, I believe. Down on the far side, the Unimogs also have, well, they have 3-point hitches on the front as well, so you could power equipment on the front. I don't think there's a PTO on the front of this particular unit. What model is this one here? The U2400 is what the model is on this one. No PTO on the front, but it does have a 3-point hitch up front. This here model of the Unimog does have a PTO and a 3-point hitch on the front, as well as the back. Now, you can get this with a variant with a box on the back of it as well, so you can haul stuff if you so desire. So, quite a few options, and once again, very well detailed inside. Now, the biggest thing with the trucks, guys, yeah, the trucks are all nice, but there's one feature that a couple of these trucks have, mostly this Unimog, and I believe one of the highway trucks off the top of my head. We just jump into the Unimog here. This one here, the SU535, I knew that off the top of my head. We go interior cab. We now have a rear view camera that's actually working. So instead of just a static image, we now have a camera that works, and it is a rear view camera. There's so much more functionality to that feature alone right now. I'm not sure why we haven't seen that in the past with other pieces of equipment. I'm really excited for that, to be perfectly honest. I think I would love to see that on a lot more things. Now, you might have actually already noticed this on one of the trucks. When I jumped into the highway truck, the Actros, you'll notice the mirrors are also digital. They are not the normal mirrors that you would see. They're actually, well, I guess technically they are, but they're not. You can see it's a low res image. One thing I do notice, I do have my settings completely cranked right now, but if you look in the mirror, you'll notice like no shadows or anything along those lines. It's a lower detailed image through the mirror, but it's still, I don't know. I don't know why we haven't seen this in the past on screens in various trucks or equipment, but I'm glad to see it's finally there. Couldn't remember where the other screen was. It's the Heinzo truck. I don't know. You got another rear view screen over on the right there. That's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. That's cool. So like I said, a few trucks along with a few hook lift containers, and then a bunch of, well, we got 4 tractors, all different sizes from small to medium. I believe this one here, I believe the 1800 series is the largest of them. They're all relatively similar, just size difference, of course, in engine sizes and tire sizes and just chassis sizes. There are a couple different options. Like you can get forestry options on a couple of them. The interesting thing with them, of course, well, you have different 3-point hitch models. There's one that we have in here somewhere. There it is. It does have a front bumper connection point. This here can be dropped if you want. I can see if we can just drop this right off. Boom. There is a truck bumper, or I guess, yeah, just a truck bumper you can attach to the front on a 3-point hitch to some of them as well. That's another piece of equipment, so that's one of them. But there is also a front loader or a rear loader option, I think on all of them, to be honest, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure if I'd ever use it or anything, but it's kind of a neat thing to have in these particular tractors. Now, the interiors of these, I find, are actually phenomenal. They did a really good job on the interiors of all these tractors. I mean, obviously, they're very similar, all of them. They're older. These Mercedes-Benz tractors are all a little bit older. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. They look pretty good. Tractors seem to run fairly well from what I can tell so far. Kind of what you'd expect, of course. They're nice to have in game for sure. So guys, as a whole, I was not exactly excited to hear that this was the 3rd DLC this year. However, after looking at it, it's actually not bad. It's definitely exceeding my expectations, and yeah, I think it's actually a pretty good fit for a DLC for Farm Sim 25. And I'm happy to have it available. So once again, if you are interested in picking that up, you can click the link down in the description. That's the Mercedes-Benz truck pack. It is currently $11.69 US. Will be $12, $12.99 on September 9th. So if you pre-order it, you get a bit of a discount. Otherwise, you can pick it up then. It's also part of the year 1 pass, so you can get all the other DLCs, which we need to talk about now. Now, as I said in the onset, Farming Simulator DLC, I think it's at a crisis stage. Okay, it's not quite crisis. It's time to make a decision. It's time to make some changes. Things are going to have to happen. And what do I mean by that? I think you guys will understand and will probably agree with me. I think most of you that I've spoken with kind of agree to some of this. But Farming Simulator 25's DLC, let's start by looking at that. What came out at the start? And when I'm talking about DLC is I'm talking about what came out as a paid DLC, not a freebie. Also, stuff that's part of the season pass. That's the stuff we're kind of looking at for the most part. Now, the first one that came out for Farm Sim 25, of course, was the Nexat pack. Kind of an interesting piece of equipment, but I would have to say that is probably the worst time we could have released that, considering the maps that were available. The base game maps were terrible for this piece of equipment. I like the Nexat. I think it's an interesting piece, but terrible time to release it. This should have been done later on when we had some maps that could actually utilize it. So that was the first one, all Nexat pieces of equipment. Next up, we had the Prairies and Plains pack, which was mostly, Ford versatile pieces of equipment. Okay, that was all right. I was happy with that. Good price point, $10. A bunch of Ford, bunch of versatile tractors that were pretty much the same idea, but I digress. Kind of a cool pack. And we scroll back on up. We're coming up to the Mercedes-Benz truck pack. Once again, all Mercedes-Benz equipment for the most part. That's the highlight of it, Mercedes-Benz equipment. And then this fall, we're getting the Highlands Fishing, expansion. Now, the big sell on this, I believe, still is the fact that we can do fishing now in Farming Simulator. But I believe we're going to be getting some JCB equipment as well. Some more JCB, which technically is already in Farm Sim, but it seems like we're going to be getting, a lot more of that. So far, we're fairly focused on brands, right? We're getting brands all through this. Now, not exactly heavy hitters, I would argue, right? So even if we go down now, if we can go down into Farm Sim 22, it was a lot of the same thing, right? The starting off was the Antonio Carrera pack for because that was, of course, we had grapes for the first time in Farm Sim, so we needed to have more equipment to work with the grapes. Going up, the Kubota pack was amazing. Great pack, a lot of Kubota equipment. Very, very much so enjoyed having those part of Farming Simulator. That Kubota pack was a great DLC. The Vermeer pack was all right as well, a little bit smaller. Of course, a smaller price point as well, only at $7.99, but some Vermeer equipment, which was nice to see. Pumps and Hoses was a different feature, so I'm not even really considering that a DLC to the same extent, since that was done by more like the modding community of sorts. But we moved to the Platinum expansion for Farm Sim 22. It was mostly Volvo, right? That was like the Volvo DLC. Yeah, it was focused on forestry, but it was mostly like a Volvo DLC. And then we move into going into the next year of that. The Gurvile pack, of course, once again, Gurvile equipment. The Hay and Forage pack, which was an interesting one because it was kind of a rebrand from a DLC pack for Farm Sim 19. We could talk about that as well. And then lastly, we had, of course, the Horsch Agrovision pack as well as the Oxbow pack. So 2 more branded DLCs basically for Farm Sim 22. Most of these were pretty much all specific brands once again. All right. Premium DLC was a bit of an odd one, actually. I'll give you props on that. That was not really branded by any specific equipment. It just brought more crop types in, and they tend to do that more so with the Premium and Platinum expansions. I'll give them that. Now, if we go back all the way to Farm Sim 19, things were a little bit different. And, I mean, it's obvious reasons why, right? Our first DLC, the Anderson pack. This was amazing. We have all sorts of Anderson equipment now for baling, bale work, picking up bales. I love this. This was a great pack. The Platinum expansion came with, was it Kloss? Yeah, Kloss. We had Kloss equipment. Of course, Farm Sim 19 it was the first time John Deere was included in Farming Simulator in base game. I mean, there was no John Deere at all in console players, but there was mods for PC, of course. Still, John Deere, Kloss together, like that's a massive 1-2 punch for Farm Sim 19. Remember that as we scroll on up to the next DLC, the Bourgault DLC, another amazing DLC that a lot of this equipment now is in base game. The Kverneland and Vicon equipment pack, another branded equipment pack. These are all big names in farming, of course, right? Large piece of equipment. And then, of course, we had the Alpine DLC, which I talked about ended up being a rebrand almost in Farm Sim 22 for a DLC. Very similar packs for the most part. And then lastly was the Grimy pack as well. So like I said, mostly equipment branded packs. Now 19 had some massive names brought in from John Deere and Kloss, of course. So that was a big deal back then. So the reason I'm saying that DLC for Farming Simulator is in a bit of a crisis mode, there's not any brands anymore that can be brought into Farming Simulator that have not already been brought in. Realistically, there are a few smaller brands out there, but the way that Giants has done the DLCs for Farm Sim, it's always been very brand specific. We bring in a modified lineup of a lot of their equipment, and they'll sell that off as a DLC package. However, we're pretty much out of those now. There's a couple on the top of my head I can think of that might be able to get a small pack, but there's not much for a full-fledged pack anymore that I can think of that will be able to do that. Now, there are some other options, but for branding, I mean, we could move into pickup trucks or something along those lines, which I think would actually do amazingly well. However, I don't know if that's the way Giants wants to move or not. I would love to see it personally. So what are our options for DLCs? Now, the most logical thing that I can personally think of is instead of going with an equipment brand, is going by a function, right? So instead of a Kloss pack or a Kubota pack, we're going to, okay, we need to do a hay pack now. And it's a whole slew of different hay and equipment that we might be able to find that's not currently available in game. Some other lesser known brands, maybe. I don't know if that's the best route or not, but that's something I was personally thinking of. A corn drying pack. I don't know. Stuff like that. That's kind of what I was possibly thinking of. But then again, how many of those can you possibly do where you don't start running out of options as well? Now, there's something else that is not necessarily DLC related. However, there is definitely something that can be said about the DLCs when we talk about, well, users, the amount of people playing Farming Simulator. Now, this is something I've been kind of following around for the last, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months now, just out of curiosity to see how many people on average are still playing Farm Sim 25. And you can see since launch after the initial drop, we're down to 40,000, and we've kind of held around, high 30s, low 40s throughout the summer, and we're ending the summer, 40,000 pretty much on the button for Farm Sim 25. Now, going back to Farm Sim 22, very similar numbers. After our drop, we had 30s, high 30s, mid 30s, low 30s, and then by the end of the summer, we're up in the high 30s, and we hit up to 45 come November, which of course I'm sure we'll hit that again in Farm Sim 25. Now things get interesting as we dive back. So this is Farm Sim 19's user. Now this is only on Steam, guys, so take that for what it's worth. Yes, it's a great metric to see. This is only on Steam, and I don't get to see console player counts or anything along those lines. This is only Steam, so PC users, but I think you can extrapolate that across all for a fairly generic percentage of people that are playing it, right? Anyways, so Farm Sim 19 on launch, it dropped down immediately down to 16,000, and by the end of the year, it started rising up pretty drastically up until about 22,000, something like that. So this is where things get a little bit interesting though. Of course, there might have been a big incident that happened at the start of 2020. You guys might remember it. Of course, that's what that spike is here. You can see this spike right there, where all of a sudden everybody decided to play some farming simulator. We were up to 34,000. And then the interesting thing about this, though, is it stayed. All of a sudden, we were starting to hold the high 30s, even well after a certain event kind of ended and we moved on. We're still up in the high 30,000s 3 years later. Like, interesting. And just for reference, I looked at Farm Sim 17 as well. It was a lot more sporadic. You could definitely see when DLCs released for Farm Sim 17, but number counts were definitely a lot lower, right? We're under 20,000 the entire time for the most part. So interesting to know, but not really helpful. But Farm Sim 25 is currently kind of flatlined at that 40,000 player mark. Farm Sim 22, very similar numbers. I'm sure we will be in the same boat in the next year and a half, 2 years with Farm Sim 25. But Farm Sim 19, and you might be able to blame this on the event that happened in Farm Sim 20. However, I still think the DLCs that came out for this particular title might have played a bigger role. The fact that John Deere was now in it and Klutch was now in it. I think that might have been the reason we were holding 40,000 people rather than being down here in the 20s, low 20s, because Farm Sim 17, it definitely didn't hit that peak and didn't hold that peak at all. So I don't know if that information is actually all that helpful or not, but I do think that DLCs could play a more centralized effect on getting new users into Farm Sim, because it does feel like Farm Sim is somewhat stagnant now over the last 2 generations. It feels like we've kind of peaked. The data I'm looking at, of course, is just number of users. It doesn't reflect number of purchases, so that is something else I have to consider when we're talking about this. I still do think that DLCs do play a fairly good size effect on bringing new people in, especially if they see something that maybe interests them. And there's something I was actually considering on this that seems like it'd be a perfect fit. Now, some of you may not like this at all. In fact, I'm not even sure how I would word this yet, because I don't want to say the wrong way, but at the same token, I think there might be an avenue where this would fit. One of the things I have heard countless times about DLCs for Farming Simulator, I think trucks would be one of the more popular ones, of course, or older equipment. Now, the problem with older equipment, of course, is typically they're not necessarily available to do proper scans of, and I would probably argue that most actual like tractor brands or equipment brands don't necessarily want to have older piece of equipment released. They have all the specs, of course, for their newest stuff. They don't want the old stuff brought out, right? It makes more sense. So instead of having a whole package, what about having just a small one piece of equipment, one tractor, say, one cultivator? I don't know, something very small. It could be older stuff that you release like once a month, something along those lines. I think that might be a good way of bridging the gap, keeping people coming back in and playing Farm Sim, whatever it might be. Now, if we want to really get into upping that player count, getting people coming back in that have already purchased Farm Sim, I think one of the key features actually would be finding maybe new ways of of new challenges. Let's go with the new challenges. And a simple one that I can think of would be just like the monthly challenge. Once again, you have to cultivate 100 acres, say, and as a reward, you would get potentially, oh, there's a hoodie that has a certain brand that's not available anywhere else. That gets unlocked. It's a free unlock as long as you do this one task for the month. And then after that, once the task is done, you get it. It's if someone doesn't happen to do that task for that month, it's locked off and they can't get it anymore. It's kind of like a one-off, fairly simple branding for a small piece of clothing in-game that is relatively inconsequential, but kind of incentivizes you to keep on coming back. And then from there, it just goes to reason if they're continually coming back into play Farm Sim when the big DLC packs come out, they're going to buy those DLC packs, which means Giants will make more money. It's just kind of simple economics, right? So that is pretty much my thoughts on the DLCs. Like I said, guys, I think we're running out of options now for the big DLC packs. I don't know how many more of these branded DLC packs Farming Simulator we'll see going forward. There's just not enough options out there anymore. I think it's going to be an interesting slug going forward here. I'm curious to see what Year 2 Seasons Pass has for us. As, like I said, there's just not a whole lot out there that we have options for. I would love to see that truck pack. Come on, Giants. You know the North American market wants to see pickup trucks in game. Anyways, let me know in the comments what you guys think. If there's anything I said you agree with, let me know down below. If you have any ideas on what brands, what else could be brought in, any other things, I'm kind of curious of what you guys think in the community. You guys come up with some pretty good ideas on this stuff. So drop me a comment down below. And other than that, I will catch you in the next one. We'll see you guys next time. This is Klutch, over and out.